Hello everybody, Oliver G here of the Earful Tower podcast. This episode is a season finale. Rather fittingly, it will come out the day after the closing ceremony of these magnificent Olympic Games, and I've kind of struggled a little bit to decide how I should personally be sharing these games, both on the podcast, on social media, even whether I should be doing it so much, really, given there's so many millions of people sharing things about the Olympics. But I figured this episode could be my sort of closing thoughts, my personal closing thoughts, the pros, the cons, and the highlights of these Olympic Games, so that you can have, I guess, a local resident who's in the media telling their honest opinion of the whole thing, you know, a very honest look at the whole thing. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go through what I consider to be the pros, the cons, and I'm going to finish on the highlights of the whole thing. But spoiler alert, I thought the whole thing was great. Let's get into it. The closing remarks after the closing ceremony for a season finale of the Earful Tower podcast. Here we go. Now, in terms of the pros, and I think with everything I say here, there's a lot more I could say. For example, I've written, as one of the pros was the opening ceremony, which was magnificent. It was just, I really thought it was brilliant. I could also say I think it was probably best suited for TV. And I think there were certainly people who were upset sitting along the River Seine in the rain, and not really understanding what was going on, maybe couldn't see a TV. Personally, I've got a whole different perspective on it because I was sitting along the Seine for part of it. I was also at this amazing private party in the Châtelet Theatre with the mayor of Paris Centre and his friends, which is really, there's a whole story there, but I don't even know how I got that invite. And we're standing on the balconies watching the boats go past. I could probably talk an awful lot more about it, but I think in general, that opening ceremony was just brilliant. The Celine Dion singing at the end was astronomical, and given all the things that sort of went wrong, especially the rain, but all the little stories behind the scenes, you maybe saw that I shared on social media. There were a few little cool Earful Tower connections going through that opening ceremony. Firstly, they showed a crocodile swimming in the canals of Paris, which I think a lot of you guys could connect to our book, Kylie the Crocodile in Paris. I got so many messages about that one. And then Ali Goodbun, who was on the show recently, the Moulin Rouge dancer, she was there on the banks of the Ile Saint-Louis dancing. She did an Instagram story later saying how difficult it was dancing on a slippery slope during the rain. And then at the end of the ceremony, the president of the International Olympic Committee was standing under an umbrella held by Daniel the rock climber, who was on the show recently, talking about how he was volunteering at the Olympics. So there are all these cool little things. So my perspective of it is certainly a unique one compared to everybody else. You know, there are all these fun little things going on. So for me, that was a real pro. I thought it was a great show, really imaginative, daring, ambitious, and well done. Another of the 5 pros that I've listed here is how happy Paris has felt. You could be, I don't know, you could be a pessimist and say that the city is so happy because all the grumpy locals have gone, although I'm not sure that's the case. I think it's more, I remember I lived in Sydney during the Sydney Olympics, and I remember very distinctly feeling that was happy. And Sydney's pretty happy anyway. So I think there's this vibe of people coming to help, volunteers, people with tickets to the games, people, almost this festival-like vibe, and it just made the City of Light shine all the brighter than it usually does. I noticed, in terms of people behaving like happy tourists, I noticed it so clearly with the police, because they flew in French police from all over the country. They even flew in police from around the world, and it was the first time I saw police offering to take photos of tourists, or I remember I saw a policeman at Bastille taking photos of tourists, and it just struck me as so weird. Parisian police are quite serious, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of crime and stuff. They got a lot to do. They're not, you would never say there's the happy Parisian police going past. But seeing these guys taking photos, I saw one guy throw a euro in the hat of a street performer, and I had to go up and I said, "Excuse me, where are you from?" And he was from Bordeaux or something like that. And then I made a point of, every time I had to scan my QR code before the opening ceremony, every time I talked to a police officer, I asked them where they're from. And I think every single one of them was from outside of Paris. So they were happy to be here. They were like on a holiday themselves. So there was just a vibe that I'd never seen before. And also, everybody, from the volunteers to the locals who stayed, to the people, visiting with tickets to the games, everyone just seemed happy. And it really added something to Paris that maybe is missing, perhaps. On a personal note, another huge advantage or a pro from these Olympics was that I had the opportunity to do a lot of media, a couple of big ones as well. So the NBC in the States and Channel 9 in Australia particularly called a couple times. And so I know a lot of you guys out there saw me on TV or heard me on radio. I think that was really great. Like, deep behind the scenes, when that stuff happens, it doesn't really make any difference. I don't think people sit there watching the news and see someone pop up for 15 seconds and say, "Oh, I better Google that guy and follow him and listen to whatever he does." It's more of a flash in the pan thing, but it's really good for people who, I don't know, stumble upon that stuff in the future or Google my podcast in the future to see that it's got some heavyweight channels calling me when they need the inside word on Paris. So it's not like this show just, tripled overnight or 100,000 new followers came in. Nothing at all like that. But it was a real cool thing to have done, and I'm really proud of it. So thanks to everybody who recorded their TV and sent things into me. It was really fun to see, and I'll try and do some sort of little highlight of the media stuff that I did. Some of it was kind of fun and silly. I took the host of Breakfast TV in Australia. I took her around and taught her how to blend in with the Parisians, told her to take off her beret and how to order in a French restaurant, stuff like that. And then there was more serious stuff like, talking to the NBC about the venues and the importance of the Olympic venues, which incidentally brings me to the next pro, which is the venues. The way they made these Olympics happen in these venues was nothing short of remarkable, especially the beach volleyball, which has to be the most beautiful sports venue ever done. If you don't know, surely you know what I'm talking about, but on the Champ de Mars, the big field next to the Earful Tower, they had this temporary stadium, very small and intimate, and for a small and intimate sport as well, just a small sandy court in the middle of it with that Eiffel Tower looming, sparkling at night. Just pure brilliance. Other venues, some of that I didn't even see, the Taekwondo in the Grand Palais, for example, the archery at the Invalides, the swimming in the Seine, all these things were just such brilliant ideas, and it was, I think it will really set the standard for future Olympic Games on how to use the city, I think it was brilliant. And the games that I saw, some of the things that I saw, 10 out of 10, really, really well done. In fact, we could even count that as a pro, the swimming in the Seine. I think I talked about it a little bit on this podcast before. I just felt there was so much negativity about how disgusting the Seine is, and people are going to get sick, and how are they ever going to clean it up, and isn't it gross? And I know how the news works. I used to work as a journalist when I first moved to Paris, and for years before that in Sweden. I know that bad news is what people click on, and I know that's why people write the bad news up, because it gets people talking. I get it, but it kind of drove me mad that so many people were, just not into this idea of cleaning up the Seine and having them swim in. I just thought it was crazy. And then when they finally did it, I don't think it got the cred that it deserved. It was so cool to see these athletes diving in the Seine and using it. And I think if this whole big plan of cleaning up the Seine continues as as it's meant to, the idea that people can swim in that river is just brilliant. So another 10 out of 10 there. That swimming in the Seine was excellent, and I think a little bit of shame on you to all these newspapers who were really ridiculing the idea and then didn't make it a front page success story when it happened. So swimming in the Seine, another pro. And lastly, the fact that Paris has been so well cleaned up for these games is something that is relevant to us all, because if you're coming to Paris anytime soon, or if you live here, you're going to benefit from what they've done in terms of from little things like, even cleaning up the Seine, even stopping the boats from putting their waste in the Seine. Just that is going to make the city better. But things like the street that I live on had cycling. The cycling races, the longer cycling races, were on it. And so they cleaned up that street. I mean, they repaved bits of it. They made the cycling paths better. They added all these cycling lanes all over the city, just to keep it green, And I think now, they fixed up a lot of buildings. They repainted a lot of stuff, but they renovated things. They made it all work. They increased they improved the way to get to Orly Airport, for example, so you can do it on the metro. I took that the other day. Just so simple. So simple. And we're all going to benefit from it. So that's a huge pro. And now that I'm risking sounding like I work for the city of Paris, I'm going to list a few of the cons, a few of the things that I didn't like about the Olympics. And then I'm going to end on some highlights. 4 that I've really singled out here in my notes. It was bad for business, and I do feel sorry for... I've got kind of mixed opinions on it. I feel really sorry for a lot of the people with restaurants who have just had... what happened is all the Parisians obviously left. They leave every August anyway, but I think a lot of people were worried that it would be too busy here. All the regular tourists, and that's a lot of the listeners to the show, the people who love coming to Paris in the summer, decided I'm going to keep a long arm's length away from this city when the Olympics are on. And that means that many of the people who did come were here just to see the water polo or just to see the whatever sport they wanted to see. And the touristy areas were less busy. A lot of the restaurants have really suffered all over the city, and not just restaurants, shops, bookshops. And so, that affects me too. A lot of the bookshops just closed down for a couple of weeks. And tours, oh my goodness. A lot of the people I know in the tour industry have really struggled in the lead up to the Olympics and during it. I haven't talked about it personally, but the outdoors, if you compare what we do in June and July and August this year compared to last year, I wouldn't even want to do the calculation, but it's been nothing. I think we've got more bookings for October tours this year coming up than we had over the whole summer, basically. I don't know, maybe October is when everyone's coming back, but we really struggled, and so did all the tour guides, pretty much. So if you are coming to Paris soon and you want to book a tour, or you think about booking a tour, not just with me, with anyone, do it, because I know people have been struggling and they'll be appreciative of business. So that was a bit of a negative. I mean, I talked to even my local restaurant I went in for a meal, and I talked to the lady. It was empty, and she said it's been a catastrophe for business. So I do feel for everybody in that situation. And even in that lead up to the opening ceremony, those 8 days where they just closed everything central near the river, and no one even knew that was going to happen, that was tough. Another negative, price gouging on tickets. Gosh, that drove me mad. I had a lot of people just bought up tickets with no intention to go, and then tried to sell their tickets for so much more than they were worth. And I know that happens every day all over the world for everything, but I felt like it really wasn't part of the Olympic spirit. And personally, I really wanted tickets to the gold medal basketball match as a basketball fan and a local as a basketball player. And then having people trying to sell them to me for $2,000 each, it's just a bit sickening, and as a result, I didn't go. And I don't know, I thought there was a bit too much of that for my taste. I think the ticketing thing was a bit of a mess, to be honest. But look, I understand that's part of life. I was fortunate to go and see a bunch of sports, so I can't complain too much, but I know that there are a lot of people that missed out. In fact, a lot of Parisians who wanted to go. I talked to a lot of people who were saying it's just too expensive, and yeah, That's a definite con. Two more. Yeah, I don't like being negative, but I got two more. I've written grumpy Parisians. I think there were a lot of locals who had a really bad attitude going into these games. I'm looking at you, my elderly neighbor. I hope she can't hear me right now, but gosh, she was really, like, I almost want to write down what she was saying, because she was just saying they're destroying the city, ruining these bridges by putting seats on them, kicking all the Parisians out, things like this, making the metro more expensive. And part of me, I just wanted to say, look, it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks for the event of a century, literally. You know, there hasn't been an Olympics in Paris since 1924. You know, I think there was a bit too much grumpiness, and I think I read some of the French news that was saying a lot of the Parisians that they interviewed who did flee for the countryside regretted it, and many of them came back for the second week of the games, so when there were no tickets left. But yeah, I think, gosh, I lived here for 10 years now, and I think I can get away with saying it, because I do love this city and its people, but I think there can be a tendency to be a bit grumpy about things, especially that you don't know what's going to happen. Like being grumpy about being put out for something that might be magnificent. I don't think you need to be grumpy about it. So there you go. That was a bit of a negative. That was a bit of a mood killer in the lead up to the games. And then lastly, this is another sort of personal one here. I struggled a bit with knowing what to share. I make a living sharing Paris, and suddenly, like I said earlier in this episode, 1 million people were sharing kind of the same thing. And then a lot of people were trying to be really imaginative, and a lot of people were doing exactly the same thing. And I think that's risky. And I didn't just want to be one of the pack. I figure, the other thing, if I'm sharing what's happening in the Olympics, there are 500 TV stations and thousands of reporters doing really similar things, so it really saturates. It really saturates exactly what I do, and I found that kind of tough to deal with. I didn't want to just share nice pictures of every venue that I went to, or selfies of me watching each sport or whatever. I thought I kind of decided pretty early on to take a step back and let everybody else share that sort of spotlight that I usually have of sharing Paris. And, I just sort of put the Olympics to the side and let everybody enjoy it how they wanted, and then figured I'd save my thoughts for these closing remarks. So I thought that was a bit of a con, because I didn't really get to do exactly what I wanted to do. And at the same time, I should mention, I applied for, I don't even know what it's called in English, but like this sort of media pass. I said, yeah, I'd like to be there where the media gets to be. And they rejected it, which I thought was so weird. Like, it would have been so cool to get some extra behind the scenes stuff. And I figured, all these journalists out there doing it, all these photographers, I'll let them do it, and I'll enjoy the games as a resident, as a local, as a Parisian. So with all that said, some of the highlights that I haven't mentioned, I figured I'll just put it on the record, what I went to see and what I thought of it. The first thing I saw was the cycling going past my very house, which was really, it was really epic. I thought it was great. The way that they had the cycling going all through the city, brilliant. I saw the beach volleyball by the Eiffel Tower, and that was really a standout thing. I think that was maybe one of the things that these Olympics will be remembered for. I also saw water polo, which again, as a local, taking the line 14 out to whatever that metro station is called, this brand new metro station. I took more pictures of the metro station, this air-conditioned, like 5-story high metro station, than I did of the water polo, which incidentally was really good, but it's another example of this city just improving for these games. I saw the gold medal men's football or soccer game, which was a extra time thriller. Even though France lost. I saw the semi-final of the basketball match, which, if you're a basketball fan, it was Serbia defeating Germany, and at Bercy Arena, which I thought was just really excellent to see a game, the smallish arena, great game, and awesome to see some of those superstars playing. And then, as I said, I didn't get tickets to the gold medal match, but what are you going to do? And I also went to one of the clubhouses at the Palais de Tokyo, which was I kind of was raising one eyebrow for most of it, but being able to sit on that sort of Sen side, I don't know what you call it, plaza out there, watching some of the games on TV was really cool. So they had the good idea there with these clubhouses and fan zones around the city. So all in all, I think you can imagine I've got more to say about it, and maybe I'll include it in some kind of sequel to a book I write about my time in Paris if I ever achieve that. But in short, what a treat to live in Paris at a time that Paris is on the world stage and performing so beautifully as it so often does. I feel very privileged to have seen it, and I just think it was a wonderful show and they absolutely nailed it. And anybody who says that they didn't, I really don't think that they know what they're talking about, because this was, for 2 very quick weeks, the greatest show on earth, and I enjoyed so much of it. So personally, I'm going to go and see what they've got in store for the closing ceremony. And as this is the season finale, traditionally I take a week or 2 off to take stock and plan the next season. I can't guarantee exactly what's going to happen there, but very soon I'll be back with new episodes. And I want to send a thank you to all the people who support this show on Patreon. Patreon.com/the Earful Tower for extra bonuses. I'm going to be doing a big rejig of all that going into the new season. Not to mention a big push on the walking tours for this coming season of walking tours. So if that's something for you, the earfultower.com/tours. Otherwise, keep listening to the show. Share it with your friends. If you've listened this far, I know you like it. Spread the word. It would mean a great deal to me. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Paris for putting on these Olympic Games. Over to you, LA. Let's see what you got for 2028. I'll be back again soon. Merci and au revoir.